Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC TV. I'm very excited. We are continuing our special series with Kevin Goodman and the RTO product suite. Today, we're going to be talking about TScale. Kevin, thanks again for taking the time to actually fly down here to North Venice and be with me to talk about all this great and exciting stuff you guys are doing.
Oh, Doug, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So for my first question, and who are you? And tell me just a brief bit about RTO Software.
Sure, no problem. RTO Software has been around since the year 2000, and I'm one of the founders of RTO. And this product that we're going to be talking about today is pretty much the reason why we started this company. Back in the day, we were doing some consulting work, and we found out that there were a lot of people having problems getting scalability on Citrix. And they're trying to get more users on their servers. Remember the big watchword back then was TCO, total cost of ownership. And so they were trying to figure out how to save money on Citrix. And in our consulting work, we found out time and time again, it seemed to be the same problem over and over. And so what we decided to do is try to productize a solution to that. And the end result is TScale.
Yeah, you bet. And TScale, I was just talking to Kevin before we started recording this, and TScale is one of those applications that I think to our world, in the server-based computing world, and it was the first memory optimization solution that ultimately get us more users per box, which was back in those days, and still to this day, one of, extremely important. At that time, I worked for Citrix, and it was really nice to go into a customer and say, oh, you have that problem? No problem. Throw TScale on there and it'll solve it. But TScale is much different than it was back then. I mean, when I first found this, it was just a very simple application. It did, the basic stuff that you talked about, but now we're way beyond that. You've also OEM'd TScale to Citrix. So a lot of people who are running 4.0, 4.5 versions of Presentation Server will find a subset of TScale in Presentation Server, the memory optimization features. So my question has to be, why would somebody need to buy TScale when that's already in Citrix if they're using Citrix? And of course, can you just talk about this sort of evolution of TScale, where it came from and where it's going?
Yeah, excellent question. Yeah, so we did the deal with Citrix. I guess it was in 03 or 04 or something like that. And there is a piece. The Citrix calls it Memory Optimization Management, and it's in 4.0, 4.5. Delaware, and some subsequent releases after that I can't talk about yet. But I will tell you that there are a couple of things different between TScale and what's in 4.5. TScale 4 is the current shipping product now. We're going to give you a little preview of something we have to come that's going to be shipping with 2008. But the Citrix stuff is basically based off our TScale 3 technology. And one of the things that you'll see on the TScale 3 technology, for those of you that are using TScale 3 or memory optimization management, is it was a two-step optimization process. You would run your applications for an entire day, and all the while there was a background process was watching those optimizations and learning things about them. And then that night or on a reboot, an optimization task would be scheduled, and it would go and optimize. So the following day, you'd have your optimizations available to you. Now, if you don't reboot on a weekly schedule, then your optimizations would be available a week later. So you'd run your applications all week and then get optimized on the weekend. One of the big differences in TScale 4 is the optimizations are immediate. You run the application, and voila, it's optimized. So there is no longer a need for a scheduled task to go along. TScale 3, which is not in the CPS stuff, also has what we call application shaping. This is the CPU optimizations and priority management. And we also do Affinity, where you can pin a process to a certain processor. In TScale 3, it was actually a static affinity, meaning that you would have to tell TScale what processor you wanted the application on. And once you did that, it worked quite well. For those of you not familiar with Affinity, what's going on in the TScale, what's going on in the terminal services world is many of these applications were written for a single processor on a desktop. And here now all of a sudden they're on a multi-processor machine in terminal services, and some of the applications actually perform poorly while running on a multiprocessor environment. And there's a bunch of technical reasons for that, but one of the solutions is to say, let's just run this application back on one CPU and let it run the way it was tuned by its developers to run. Well, in TScale 3, if you wanted to sit down and spend the time and say, okay, I want all of Excel to run on processor 0 and all of Lotus Notes to run on processor 1, you could get a pretty good balanced situation in which all the CPUs were being used and the processes were all working efficiently. Well, in TScale 4, we have what's known as dynamic affinity, where, one, we know whether this app is going to run well on multiple processes or not, and there's a series of things we go through. So if you look at dynamic affinity, it will not try to, if you look at TScale using dynamic and affinity, it won't optimize SQL Server. TScale knows that this is a process that's optimized for multiple processors, but it will do something like that for Excel, at least the most current shipping versions of the Excel. We may see as days come on the Microsoft products, since everyone has dual core now, they may be optimized in the future, but right now in the shipping products, it'll put it on the processor, the least busy processor. Therefore, you don't have to go and try to figure out what's going on.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Why do I want TScale, this version versus what's in Citrix?
Yeah, so it makes it a lot easier to use by having the Tscale. So there's not a lot of stuff going on as far as configuration. And one of the things that anyone that's using the 4.0, 4.5 version of Citrix will know, there's a lot of exclusion list management that you have to do on this memory optimization management. And that becomes a time-consuming task if you have a big farm. And what exclusion list management is there are certain apps that memory optimization management doesn't optimize well. And as a matter of fact, on some of those apps, it actually causes them to break. And in TScale 4, we've just about eliminated the need for an exclusion list altogether. So you just install this application, and it just runs. And it makes it much easier for you to go about and optimize your servers. You don't have to be standing over the top of them all the time.
Well, very cool. Actually, that exclusion list, I was talking to a friend of mine who was saying, yeah, I love that memory stuff, but it doesn't work. I have this server, and it just doesn't work for us. And what happened was it was an application. So at TScale, he wouldn't have that problem at all, but with the memory optimization stuff found in Citrix, we had to go in and actually exclude that through registry entries and all these other
Yeah, so the TScale product has moved quite a while since the Citrix deal. And, we learned a few things along the way about which applications are sensitive to optimizations and which applications, you can expose certain bugs in an application if you make it run faster than it was meant to run. So we've learned how to go in there and be gentle on those types of things with the TScale 4. So you have a lot less management that you have to do.
Perfect. I have one more question about the Citrix RTO relationship also, and that is, as 4.5 comes out, has come out. That's a newer version than obviously 4.0, where TScale first was introduced within the presentation server family, I guess. Now Delaware is coming out. Do they have TScale enhancements, or is it still the same basic code that you OEM to them back a few years ago?
It's pretty much the code from 2003. This is all public knowledge because there's a beta available for Delaware, and you can look in there and see that there is a memory optimization in there. But basically, that's the same code that's in 4.0.
Okay, so as TScale is enhanced, the memory optimization features and the way it's working and the benefits you're getting, we'll actually see this when you show us the TScale for 2008. That's not actually we're not going to see that same benefit within Delaware. So
that's right. Yeah, one other feature I didn't mention is one of the things that we try to do at RTO Software is it's one thing to it's one thing to optimize an inefficient process. But what TScale 4 does takes the next step further and actually eliminates some inefficient processes. And one of the things that you can do in TScale 4 is you can actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. One of the things that you do in both memory optimization and in TScale is you optimize the way DLLs load in memory. And we'll have an example here that will show you how the DLLs are loaded from an app that we've written that is a very poorly written app called FatApp. But
let's just dive into this.
You want to jump into it? But one of the things I want to tell you is one of the things that the old T-Scale 3 and the Citrix piece does is it just tries to optimize that. One of the new features that's in T-Scale 4 is if you're not using a DLL that you've loaded in memory, we'll actually stop it from loading. We call it dynamic delay loading, and what will happen is until the moment you need that DLL, we'll keep it on disk. So it really gets the app down to a very low usage, and only when you bring those apps into memory does it bother to load them.
Now, the logical question for that feature there is, do we see a degradation of performance for that application as now it has to load this DLL upon use?
Yes, so what we've done is we've traded load time for the opportunity that you'll never use this DLL. At the time you go to use it, you may see a little bit of a bump. For example, what's a good DLL to delay load would be all your printer DLLs. Think of your session with Microsoft Word in which if you could go in and examine the memory, you'd notice that Word has loaded from the moment you start it up and is carrying all of the DLLs to print to any possible printer that you're connected to. Now, if in this session you never print, what'll happen is all those DLLs will be in there in memory for no reason at all. At the moment you go to print, well, that might be the point in time that you want to load the DLL, but just for the printer that you're printing to, not all of the other printers. Yeah. How many times do you print to every single printer?
Never.
Yeah, you don't. You print to this one for one reason and that one for another reason. So what we do is we delay load those until you actually need them. Is there a little delay there? It's hard to even tell, milliseconds.
Yeah.
But the benefit is you're not carrying around all that weight for the entire session.
Which ultimately gives us more users per box, right?
Exactly.
And that's important. Okay, we had a great conversation there. I learned a lot about what's new in T-Scale. Well, what do you have in front of us? I know you have a bunch in front of us, so show us.
All right, so you're staring at the RTO console right here, and forgive us for putting an ad for our other products over there on the right side, but this is a tool for you to sit at one location and manage all of your servers. You'll notice we have one server in here right now. That just indicates to us that this is a server that we're optimizing files on. We're going to come down here and I'm going to bring up another server, and basically what I do is I want to show you an application we've written called FATApp. And FATApp is just an application that uses a ton of DLLs, and these DLLs don't always load in the correct place in memory where they should. And I think earlier I made a snide comment that this was a poorly written app, but I want to make a big distinction about that. It's actually not the developer's fault who wrote FATApp. Imagine a DLL that you're writing, and the idea behind DLLs, dynamically linked libraries, is that you will have one DLL that can run in multiple applications. A great example of this is the HTML DLL that Microsoft produces. Originally written by the Internet Explorer team, it is the DLL that renders the HTML when it comes across a page. This component-based development that we have, this DLL also resides in all the Office apps. So imagine the dilemma that's sitting in front of the HTML DLL developer when he tries to decide where in memory this DLL should go. Well, he put it in a place that is most optimal for Internet Explorer. And so when it loads in Internet Explorer, it loads at what it's called its correct base address, and it's very efficient. Well, other people are using this DLL as well. Word uses it if you want to write out HTML code from your Word document. How is the Internet Explorer developer supposed to know that that would be run in Word? So how would he know where to put it there? Then Excel can also do the same thing, as you know, and developers all over, that third-party developers are free to use this DLL as well. Consequently, there's actually nowhere that this guy can pick that's going to satisfy everybody, and that's where a product like T-Scale comes in. It takes a looks at where the DLL is sitting in memory, it finds its most optimum location for it, and the end benefit is if it's in a place that is what we call a collision, it takes twice as much memory to load. So if you find your correct base address, you're using half the memory that you probably would before. So let's take a look at this application called FATApp. And in FATApp, all we do is we come in here and we say we want to load some DLLs. And we just load 40 DLLs. I actually loaded it twice. First time it took that long. Second time, since they were already loaded, it didn't take very long.
Go to IIS 6 for the fat app that's...
Yeah, and so what I want to show you is I've got this loaded on a machine in which there is no Tscale involved. And I'm going to point you to something, a column inside of Task Manager called VM size. In Task Manager, that stands for virtual memory size. If you're using perfmon, that would count as private bytes. Private bytes are memory that the application is using for itself. This private bytes is what is a result of whether you're going to get scalability or not. And you'll see here we've got 10 meg of private bytes. This version of FATApp, unoptimized, all of the DLLs are not loading at the correct base address. Consequently, it's taken about 10 meg to find places in memory for them to load. Now let's go back to our optimized version here, and let's take a look at Task Manager here. And you'll see FATApp is down to, I said half, it's down to 60%. And you'll see in here, if we minimize this, we'll see that as it's been run, we'll notice that this is how much memory savings he has here. Current VM savings is in green. So you're saving, quite a bit, 568K per user of FATApp. Now, if this is an app you published out to all your users, you're talking about a 30%, almost 40% increase in scalability by using Tscale.
Wow.
So just simply putting Tscale on, you're going to get a 40% increase, which means if you're doing server consolidation, you can drop about a third of your servers, between 25% and a third of your servers, and do the exact same work with no downside. So
that's very impressive. And that's just one application that's on your presentation server. Or in our case, it's not a presentation server, but if we're looking at this for presentation server and or terminal services.
Yeah, and so Tscale 4 will do just about, and this is another difference between it and what's in Delaware, is Tscale 4 will also optimize services, things that run in the system context. It'll also optimize DLLs that run in System 32, so Microsoft DLLs can get optimized. You can't do that in the version that it comes out with Delaware. So you get a big boost on top of what you can get scalability-wise compared to what you get with the base on Delaware.
Well, very impressive, very impressive. You've been sort of clicking through here and showing some of these graphs. Can you explain what this sort of tree is, optimization or application optimizations, and then these different apps? What is this that we're looking at?
So what's happened here is Tscale has come through and optimized applications, and we're keeping a track of them for here so you can try to get an idea of how well you've done. 436 KB per user for Explorer, which is great because that's an app that's inside System 32, and now you're talking if you're publishing a desktop without even running another application, you're going to get a 10-15% user bump just from using Tscale.
Wow.
And you can see here the DLLs that it's optimized. And each time you run Tscale, it may find more DLLs to optimize because of, for example, like in Internet Explorer, each web page you go to may download an ActiveX control or something. So it's continually working for you, continually finding things to optimize, and not requiring you to wait until the next day. So if you went to a web page only once, you'd get the benefits using Tscale 4, as opposed to if it optimized overnight and you never went back to it, then you got no benefit for it.
Makes sense. You also have policies. I see a node for policies. What is that?
So the idea behind this console right here is you can sit at your desktop and manage the optimizations on all of the servers. So you can set up a what we call a policy that'll say what type of applications we want to shape, what type of applications we want to optimize. And some of the things that we have on here that you can check are the basic VM performance, which we've been talking about. The advanced memory manager is what we were talking about with the dynamic delay load. So you can pick applications and that you want to stop DLLs from loading if they're not being used. And we also have a performance optimization, which is something technically known as binding, but it makes your applications load faster. The other thing that we have that you can set into policies, your application shaping, and you can go through and CPU shape applications. In this particular case, we're saying, hey, take all the program files, and if any application uses CPU greater than 30% for 30 seconds, I want you to reduce its priority. What's value about that, and if you listen to our Pinpoint Doug Brown TV broadcast, then you know that when you reduce the priority of an application, that enables the other applications to get CPU if they need it. But if no one else needs the CPU, that allows this application to use it. Consequently, what you may see when you have T-scale optimizations on is if you look and you see that one application is using a lot of CPU, but it's been shaped, it still may look in Task Manager as using 100% CPU. But if you go and look in the individual things in Task Manager, you'll find that it may be at a low priority where other ones are at normal priority. What's important about that is that means that you don't have to restrict an application from using CPU if no one else needs it. Some of the competition that's out there will throttle you down and restrict you from using CPU, even if CPU is available and no one else is using it. The reason we brought it up in the Pinpoint broadcast is because Pinpoint is one of the few monitors that are out there that if you're using this type of CPU optimization management, won't alert you that the CPU has gone too high, where the other monitors out there aren't smart enough to know that, yes, it's taken up 100%, but half of it's in low priority or idle priority, so it's not really something you need to be alerted about.
Makes sense. Well, what else do we have here? We have licenses. That's obviously self-explanatory.
Yeah, so you can license it for your whole farm or just a group of servers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One of the exciting things I want to tell you about is we've got another version coming out when Windows 2008 comes out. You want to hear about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so remember those numbers, right?
Yeah.
10 meg unoptimized, 6.6 meg optimized with T-Scale 4. Let's go take a look at, I've got a Longhorn test box here, and we're going to log into it.
I'm very excited about Longhorn, about Windows Server 2008 terminal services. Just to digress for a second, what are you hearing about this stuff? Are you guys excited about it? I mean,
our customers are coming to us, and they're saying, using remote app, and some of the rudimentary load balancing features in there, some of our customers think they can do away without the Citrix license.
Interesting.
Now, we don't, as a company, take sides. We love Citrix. These guys put us on the map, but we're going to be prepared for those terminal services users who decide they don't need Citrix.
Perfect.
And an example of that is a T-Scale 5 right here. Same FAT app, 32-bit FAT app running. And we're using, if you haven't seen it before, this is the Windows 2008 version of Task Manager, in which it has a resource manager. And remember I was saying private bytes? Take a look at some of the work we've done on T-Scale 5. We've got those private bytes down to 1.3 meg.
Wow. So we went from 10.5 unoptimized to 6.6 optimized on 2K3 down to 1.3 on 2008. I have to ask, are we going to, with T-Scale 5, are you going to have a 2003 version that would show us the same benefit on without 2008?
Good question. We are taking advantage of a couple of new 2008 features in there. We've been working with Longhorn for a long time, and we've done a lot of research development in there, and we're squeezing these kind of memory optimizations out of here that we just can't get out of 2003. So it may be all the more reason for people out there who are thinking of going to 2008. This may be all the more reason to go out there, because you're going to get a tremendous amount of scalability increases with a combination of 2008 and T-Scale 5.
What with 2003, you're talking 30-40% increase. What are you seeing with 2008?
Same exact application. So you take those 32-bit applications and you're running them on 2003, and you're seeing 33% on average. You're going to see over 50% on average with T-Scale 5 on 2008.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's very
So you're
cool.
talking twice as many users. And that's on average. That means some are going to be, more than twice as many users. Some would be around twice as many. So, it's an average.
You bet. And you had mentioned, a lot of your customers are looking at 2008 and saying, heck, I don't even need Citrix. But Citrix will have a 2008 version out also. So that being said, if you are a Citrix customer and obviously you want to stay a Citrix customer, you can still use TScale version 5 and get that 50% savings on top of it. Is that?
Yeah, there's a feeling within RTO that the existing memory, and that's why we had to do all this work, the existing memory optimizations that we use in TScale 4 and the Citrix memory optimizations that we built in TScale 3 will pretty much be obsolete in 2008. I'm not sure why you would want to turn those on when you have something that would get you this twice as much.
Yeah. Now, I have a couple more questions for you. Let's say I have presentation server 4 or 5. I have and then I go to install TScale. Does it automatically disable that? Do I need to have it disabled? Will it stomp on each other? Things like that.
Yeah, good question. Yes, so if you want to upgrade over the top and take full advantage of all the memory optimizations that are available for you, and you're a 4.0 or 4.5 customer, when you install TScale, we will go ahead and automatically, seamlessly under the covers, convert everything, and it's a smooth upgrade right over the top.
Perfect. And then my other question here is, with your new virtual profile solution, you're really looking at the VDI world and saying, hey, this virtual profiles can solve big problems within VDI. Do you see a play for TScale within the VDI space?
There is a play for TScale. There's as yet we haven't announced anything, but what you could imagine is there's going to be something that might sit on the server that optimizes all the VMware sessions or the virtual server sessions, the virtual XP sessions, from the outside, giving you even that much more benefit rather than having an individual agent inside each of the sessions.
Kevin, thank you so much, and let's just go ahead and conclude this episode. Sound good?
Sounds good.